So thank you everybody for coming on to our September conference call. It's our first call since April. I hope that you've all had a good summer. This call, we switched things up a little bit this year. Normally, come October, we'll have members of the main office on the call to talk about pricing, trucking, other kind of things that are going on with the company. We've moved that up to tonight because of the price increase that occurred recently. So Rick Bobel and Matt Schoder, Mick Bobel is our president, of course, and Matt Schoder is our comptroller, are on tonight. They'll be covering some of that stuff. After that, Jim Hallbiden is going to come on, and then we have Bruce Stevens, who is a district manager with us from Indiana, and he'll be discussing the calendar photo. I'm drawing a blank on the month now, but I believe it's September. Showing a lime where there was a lime pile in a field, and there's corn growing there that's doing quite well. So we'll be discussing that photo and the implications of it as well. So Rick and Matt, if you guys are ready to go, you can take over.
Cool. Thanks, Zach. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Anything else, Zach?
I think one last thing, and maybe Russ can correct me or let me know if this is right, but we are going to have a time for questions. So if you would like to ask a question, I believe you can unmute yourself, but it may send a request to us. So Russ, I saw you were on here, or somebody that knows how this works better. If you could confirm that, please. All right, well, maybe we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So Rick, if you're good to go, then take her away.
Sounds good. Thanks, Zach. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Good to have you on the call tonight. So I want to officially welcome you to the 2022 sales year, our 67th go around at this thing. Tonight, Matt, our VP of Finance and Operations, and I will talk a little bit about the pricing for this sales year, some plans for the winter meeting, and some new things we're excited to share with you. So I'll talk a little bit about the pricing and some other things we probably not talked about too much that could be kind of interesting to you. As we begin our 67th year, the one thing that seems to remain consistent is change. To support our sales force and customers, we're moving up our 10% cash in advance of delivery discount to October 1st. This 10% discount will be in effect until December 15th, 2021. Pricing for GMS will increase on average of about 9%, slightly less in Canada, thanks to the favorable exchange rate. Specific pricing has been sent to all growers' sales personnel. So if you need a specific price for a particular quantity, they will be happy to let you know what that is. In the past, we generally have not adjusted our price during the course of the sales year, even if we experienced an increase in our raw material costs. However, this year, with the extreme volatility in transportation costs, we may need to make adjustments to the pricing at any time. To make sure you get the best pricing possible, we would encourage you that orders be sent to us as soon as possible. As we began the process for setting our prices for this upcoming year, we were struck by the differences between how we went about setting our prices and how others in the industry seem to set their prices. Without getting too technical, it could be a little interesting and informative to look at the process of how setting prices happens. Like any business, our process of setting prices begins with looking closely at the costs that are involved in the production of GMS. The biggest costs involved are those of our high quality raw materials that make up GMS. And Matt will talk a little bit more about that later on. As a company, we don't pay a lot of attention to setting prices based on factors in the marketplace or pricing based on what the market will bear. We've always looked closely at our own cost and determined what we felt was a reasonable rate of return on our investment. Following that approach has allowed us to keep our prices consistent last year and only increase 9% this year. We may have missed on an opportunity to make a larger return on investment because the market was pushing prices up. But we like the idea that we were supporting our customers. This spring, we experienced a price increase in one of our raw materials due to a supplier shortage. So our cost to make GMS went up. We thought long and hard about adjusting our price to make up for the increase in our costs. We understood that our customers were facing the same issue of increasing costs on most of their inputs. We made the decision to keep our price where it was to help our customers, build goodwill with those who have supported us. It affected our bottom line, but was consistent with how we like to operate our business. Our annual winter sales meeting, scheduled for early December, will be virtual with several days worth of online meetings on a wide variety of subjects and topics. There'll be guest speakers and opportunities to ask questions. Specific dates and times will be made available soon as the schedule has been finalized. Also new is the updated Growers Sales Manual and Growers Resource Manual. The updated sales manual will be sent out early fall, and the resource manual, which includes information from our director of research, Jim Hallbeisen, should be in the hands of our sales force now. We appreciate your continued support and look forward to a prosperous 2022 season. If there's anything we can do to help, please let us know. Now, I'll turn it over to Matt for his perspective on raw materials, costs, and what he sees in his crystal ball.
Thanks, Rick. Yeah, just hello to everybody out there tonight. Yeah, just a few notes on raws. I wanted to say that the biggest thing that we did this year is we started much earlier than normal with our discussions on raw materials. In fact, it was late June, just because of the huge amount of volatility and supply issues that's going on in the marketplace. And we wanted to get ahead of that because, there's just so much uncertainty going on, and we were just really very curious to see what impact this was going to have on our next season pricing, and we wanted to make sure we had enough time to investigate everything. And we met with a lot of suppliers. Some of them really couldn't even give us a quote because they don't have the availability to even supply us, which was a little unusual and a little disturbing, but not surprising. But really, we were able to get some nice quotes, and we worked with a lot of different suppliers, and we were able to come up with I think a very reasonably good price for GMS. As you know, transportation is also a huge component of the cost of raw materials, and that's another reason why raws have increased besides the very high marketplace demands. And I just wanted to point out, it was really interesting. One of our suppliers gave us a real scenario, a real life example where, let's say, a large soft drink manufacturer typically has bought a bunch of citric acid and has used cargo ships to transport that material. Well, they are now chartering Amazon cargo jets to move this material. So you can imagine how much extra money that costs. But again, they've got no choice. The supply chain is broken. There's such a huge demand. So it's an interesting world out there right now. But so in addition to all the work we did to control the raw costs, we also continue to work on improving our manufacturing processes, inventory control, office procedures, and delivery of GMS. And ultimately, we want to point out again that keeping our costs low will help keep the GMS price as low as possible. Even though we have taken a ton of actions to keep our costs as stable as low as possible. Again, I'll say it again, we strongly encourage you to get your orders in as soon as possible, because with today's tight and volatile market, there's always a possibility that prices could increase again because of, you probably heard the term force majeure. Even if we have contracts in place, if there's a force majeure event, you can Google it later if you really want to find out. If that force majeure event takes place, the contract goes out the window. Force majeure could be something like a hurricane hitting down south. Something like that, contracts are null and void and the price can go up. I also wanted to point out, we've heard that fertilizer prices have gone up 40, 50, or even 60%. So we're very, very happy to say that our price has only increased about 9%. With that, we also would encourage you to understand and start looking at that cost and nutrition analysis, or the CNA. The reasons for taking the time with this are, one, to understand how superior GMS is and the amount of nutrition it supplies to the plant. Two, to see the true cost of the GMS program per acre, and the fact that you can compare the costs to other fertilizer programs. And when you do that, you'll see how truly cost competitive, if not cheaper, we are with other fertilizer programs. And the other thing would be to just see how GMS is nearly all utilized by the plant compared to other programs that have a lot of wasted material that's lost to the environment. So with that tool, combined with our very low price increase, we encourage you to reach out to both existing and potential new customers, and encouraging them to experience all the benefits of GMS. So besides helping others, higher sales volumes will also help to keep the price of GMS as low as possible. Just a few quick procedure reminders. Please make sure you're using the correct price sheet. I know there's been a lot of those lately, but please make sure you're using the correct price sheet for the date that you're writing the order. And please make sure that you are filling out an order along with sending a check. You must always have an order. Sorry, I'm pausing for the... Okay, so we must always have an order so that you'll, number one, keep us legal and for the proper record keeping, etc. So please send in an order, not just a check, not just a delivery ticket, but all of those need to be sent in. And please keep in mind the timeliness of receiving that paperwork is important for a lot of reasons, including, keeping the cost product low and keeping the inventory accurate. That's real critical. So finally, just keep in mind the U.S. mail timeliness is still a problem. So, the more and the quicker you can get get all those items into us, the better. One of the big things I'll point out, that you may have already received it, I know some people have, the grower's order form that has served us for many, many, many years has been officially retired, and taking its place is a larger and easier to use form. Instead of being, half a page, it's a full 8.5 by 11 sheet. Like I said, if you haven't received it, you will shortly. This new form should make it filling out the order correctly much easier. And to assist in that process, there's also a pad holder with our new logo that is being sent to our DMs and reps, and it's sized to accommodate that larger order form, and proudly shows off our new Farmer Solution logo. So we just strongly encourage everyone to fill out all the blanks, especially the date ordered, the date wanted, or in some cases, date delivered. But I think once you get used to it, I think you'll enjoy it. I know we spent a lot of time on it trying to make it better. overall, most importantly, all of us at Growers want to thank our DMs and our reps for helping make growers customers satisfied and successful. So please let us know how we can help you at any time.
All right. Then if there are no questions, we can move on to the next portion of the call, which will have Jim Hallbeisen come on.
Thanks, Zach. This is Jim Hallbeisen. What I'm to discuss this evening is kind of current events. Right now, I'm with John Sensenik up in northern New York. We conducted a field day today at Steve Cutterback's farm. The interest is very good. The turnout was very good. Of course, we always like to see more, but again, very nice interest in people that are looking at the program. And of course, I've been on the road since the middle of July. Actually, I was with Daniel Weaver at the end of June. And the big issue is always, particularly this year, is price. You know, the increase in pricing in your conventional fertilizers started, you know, basically the end of January. We saw the price of both nitrogen and phosphorus increase quite significantly in the month of February, March, April. Potash itself did come up a little bit, but only in the 15-20% range. Well, in the last 6 weeks, basically, that potash has caught up and is in that 50 to 60% increase range. So again, this is one of the big topics, and the farmers that aren't discussing it have not paid any attention to what those fertilizer prices have done and have been quite surprised by it. Some of our people have talked about our 9% increase and have displayed displeasure with it, but once the farmer finds out what the other fertilizer materials have done, it's quite a pleasant surprise to them. And see, again, I think that this is something that our sales force has to get out, has to talk about it. Actually, I'm getting some feedback from the road that the El Cheapo fertilizers, the 918-9s, who have gone to a protocol of using distributors and co-ops to sell their product, they haven't been able to hold their price down because they can't show a large difference between their product and the conventional fertilizers. This is an alert to the farmers that there's something unique going on in the industry. And so that has really helped our perspective as far as our price is concerned. So we're encouraging our sales force to get out there and talk business because we think we're very, very competitive. Actually, some of the gentlemen that I've talked to about the El Cheapos have told me they find it quite unique that we're on the other side of the coin being as cheap or cheaper than some of these other products. And in some cases, they haven't even added their micronutrient package in there, which adds basically $1 a gallon. So this thing is, it's a whole unique arena out there this year, guys. And from my perspective, farming, I'm taking what Rick and Matt are talking about quite seriously. Once we have this price, if we can lock it in, that pretty well gives us a benchmark to start our marketing, our grain marketing with. And see, my big question has been, what have the main seed companies said? We know that the local seed companies have gone up 5-6%, some cases 10%. A lot of the major seed companies, the guys are telling us that they don't have any quotes from them at this point in time, when that should come in this month of September, as it always does. The other thing is we're having alerts on chemicals per se. Actually, one of our district managers who bought his herbicide in the November, December timeframe and didn't have enough to finish the season, he was in there pricing it in July and found out that it had increased quite significantly. And see, again, this is all basically predicated on the increase in commodities. And any of your advisors that are talking about this, right away tomorrow, we have another WASAID report that's going to come out. The scuttlebutt is now that the government is going to raise the production not through yield but through acres, particularly in corn. And see, this is all predicated on trying to control the new crop price. And see how much these chemical companies can hold these price increases. If this price starts to back down a little bit, that's the big question mark. So again, I think once you feel you have a very good price to work with on your inputs, that gives you an opportunity to go ahead and do marketing. And again, I know it's very risky business when you haven't got it in the bin. But again, if you do a certain percentage to cover your costs, that gives you a benchmark to work from. So again, this is what a lot of the talk or the discussions at our various meetings that are on the minds of farmers per se. And so we've been trying to talk about that. I think Russ and Rick did a nice job of explaining to you guys what cost factors they got to think about when pricing the product. And see, again, this has been the mantra of growers that, okay, we've got to keep the doors open, but by that same token, we don't want to ride on the back of our customers. So we try to do this in a reasonable format. And I think that's going to show itself this year. And see, the cost analysis sheet, this is something we tried to implement years ago, didn't do a very good job of it. Matt comes along and gives us this, the cellular technology or from the spreadsheet technology to do something fairly simply. And see, this is where it has to take study on the salesman's part to figure out how to use that thing, but it's got tremendous potential, not just comparing growers to other fertilizers, but even within other fertilizer networks. The guy is trying to decide whether to buy 28 or whether he should buy urea. See, that cost analysis sheet can help you with that decision process. It has absolutely nothing to do with sales of growers. That's tremendous service, in my opinion. And see, there's no one else in the industry attempting to do anything like that. The other issue is we've got a lot of different research that's coming along now. We're looking at the microbiometer as a soil test to replace the conventional chemical soil test. We don't know that it will give us the information that we're looking for, but we're experimenting with it, and hopefully it will give us some kind of information that'll explain to us, how we're improving biological life in soil. But the research that is coming out in the plant arena or in the plant science arena, not necessarily from agronomy, not from the agricultural colleges at the state institutions, but from the Department of Botany Biology, talking about how the biological life actually feeds the plant, how it stimulates the immune system. This information is just basically showing that Victor Tejan's approach was dead on. And this is the way that you can control these costs. Wilbur Franklin told me many times, Doc Tejan's told farmers, you're never going to control the price of your product. You're only going to control the price of your inputs. So you have to figure out how to get those inputs to be more efficient. And see, that's basically the grower's program. So that research that's coming out now and backing our position, we find very, very helpful. And this is very sound research. They're using the electron microscope. They use staining techniques to follow these microbes. They're using gene sequencing to differentiate these microbes. And see, all of this is spillover from human medicine, because that's where the money's at, guys. And see, they're able to research these things that give us a leg up on understanding, how that biological life works in the rhizosphere of the plant. And see, there's some things that I've used at my meetings that the new research is saying that's not correct. There's another way that occurs, and those are the types of things that we try to discuss at our meetings. And see, this COVID thing has given me some problems in the last year as far as getting out in the field and conducting meetings. We think we've got a little bit better handle on that now, and so we want to get back to normality on that. We're not going to be able to do it with the annual meeting because we're bringing in people from all over the country, and that's being frowned on by these local health departments. Now, for one guy to basically go into different areas, that doesn't seem to be as much of a problem. So we think we can get back out in the field. We can start discussing some of these things that'll give you more ideas of why the growers program works. And the reception today from a couple of our old customers was very, very good. The discussion that we brought to them, pointing out to them the differences that the research are showing us, which really gives a positive spin on what we're doing with the growers program. And so that's the type of thing that it's all based on education. That was the format that Victor Tegens wanted to use. We're going to educate this farmer, and he's going to be able to make good fundamental decisions on how to improve his operation. And that doesn't necessarily mean us selling the product. It means that we're going to help him in all avenues of what he's doing, so that he can make better decisions to make his operation more sound fundamentally. So the issue on price goes along with what commodity prices are doing. And again, the WASAID report tomorrow, corn and beans have been falling the last 6 to 7 days. They came back, bounced back a few times, but it's been more on a down leg than on an up leg. And see, this is another factor that we got to see how the government's going to get involved with that. And that's our biggest challenge, is trying to figure out what they do with these reports and how they try to manipulate the market. So again, that comes out tomorrow at noon, 11 o'clock Central or noon Eastern time. And some of the things they're talking about is that the Chinese buying has been backing off a little bit. We've got the drought and its effect. What I see after, a couple months of traveling is west of the Mississippi, they're struggling, and east of the Mississippi, things look pretty good. When I was in Minnesota, we got into North and South Dakota, a lot of western Minnesota. They're struggling. I mean, so here we got in the last 10 days, Dave McIver tells me they're getting 8 inches of rainfall. So they're trying to chop corn, and they got a mud hole now. So again, this is the situation when you work with Mother Nature. But the fields that we saw, the guys that we were talking to, the dry weather has definitely taken a toll on them. And so some of the things that we've actually seen at some of these farms, we had some gentlemen putting in tile lines where they stripped off 5 foot of soil and couldn't believe the root structure that they saw when they got that 5 foot stripped off. And this is a field that's had 15 ton of high cal over 10 to 15 year period. They've been following the use of the growers in the row and on the foliage, and the kind of root growth that helps them sustain themselves in very dry weather. They're absolutely amazed with it. You see, again, that's the type of education that we're trying to give guys. And it was, the old, you dig the hole next to the plant that Wilbur Franklin always said, you learn more in 5 minutes looking at roots than you are looking at the top growth all season long. And that was definitely true in the trench that we were looking at up there in Minnesota. So again, the tour is telling me that in the east we're going to have some good yields. When I was with Lowell Grove, Lowell ended up with 8 inches out of that. We had some fields that were inundated with water, so they're going to be hurt. So again, individual areas have had problems. Northern Illinois, guys are saying the crop looks pretty good, but when you get in there and see the damage when pollination was occurring, they're already saying where guys are shelling corn up in that Rockville area, 52-pound test weight. Some of the stuff is wetter, high 20s, but some is down in the lower moisture regimes, and they're still only looking at 52-pound test weight. Well, again, we get into this factor is how much feed value does it have? Are these chicken boys going to run out of feed next summer when this stuff doesn't carry for them? So again, there's a lot of unknowns out there that could affect the price of these commodities. So again, I think that's something that everybody has to keep in mind and see. This is one of the things that we think the Growers Network is very valuable for. We're not trying to make any predictions or how to market. All we're doing is telling you what farmers see. And again, we think that in many cases has a lot more validity than the government census that they're taking, trying to guesstimate what's out there. Maybe they get good data. How does that data turn around? What you're getting from the Growers Network is farmer to farmer. And we think that's a very key part of the organization. And that will continue. And guys that have interest in that, never hesitate to, talk to Zach, talk to myself. We'll tell you what we're seeing, what we're hearing from guys. We don't pretend to have the whole answer, but we'll give you information that we think is fundamentally sound. So I would say at this point, Zach, if anybody's got any questions that they want to shoot out there, they're more than welcome. We'll tell them what we know.
Sounds good, Jim. Thanks. So if you guys have questions, again, if you're on a phone, it's *6, unmute yourself, or *9 to raise your hand, and I can unmute you. And if you're on your own computer, you should be able to unmute yourself. I got one question, Jim.
Sure.
Back to the cheaper liquids that are competitors. You'd mentioned that because they have products in co-ops and stuff like that, that their prices have to go up. What's the correlation there? Like why having it in co-ops and whatnot, does that affect the price?
Because the networks that sold product like we do, where we've got our farmer reps that work like a seed corn company, they were able to have only the price of their actual products. Maybe they were selling, a 918.9 or 624.24 or 721.7. That's the only price they had to worry about. Now, when they sell through a co-op or a distributor, they may sell those same three products or maybe only a 918.9. However, if that product only goes up 15% and the co-op's DAP or MAP or 32 or 28 or 0060 went up 60%, they've got some explaining to do why those products went up 60 and the 3-element El Cheapo only went up 15%. So
Okay.
they're going to have to match that up so that there isn't a question on why there's this big variation. Because if there is a big variation, why are they able to get their stuff cheaper? Are they buying it from the major suppliers cheaper? That's going to give them problems. Now, I have nothing to basically substantiate that other than our guys talking to other customers of the El Cheapo products. And
Okay.
what the potential customers are telling our guys is your product is pretty doggone cheap compared to the El Cheapos. And see, that's never happened in the past. You go back to the 08, 09 extravaganza where the price ran, a lot of those El Cheapos, they actually went down in price. And see, nobody understood that because they didn't have anything to compare to. And the people that are supplying the DAP and the MAP and the 0060 are never going to allow that.
Yeah.
So this is why our sales force and guys that are customers, you need to be talking to our sales force and find out exactly, where this price is landing for you. Because again, I think it's going to be very, very competitive I know against conventional fertilizers, but I think the 3-element El Cheapo fertilizers are going to be quite surprising. Yeah, the gentleman that was talking to me about it, he was totally floored by it. He just said, "I've never been in this position representing growers in the past." And see, that's going to be a nice. It's going to be a nice help to guys that are repping for us. So they need to follow that up and dig into that, because it appears that's where it's going. And see, we'll just see how long the chemical companies will maintain these higher prices. If the seed corn companies come out and they keep their price under control, and the chemical, your herbicides and that don't take that big jack, we'll see how long fertilizer can maintain that. Back in the 08, 09 extravaganza, seed corn didn't go up near the same amount, and the herbicides didn't go up nearly the same amount. And once farmers resisted, they didn't buy, and that basically drove the price back down again. The only problem was the resistance lasted well into the spring, and then availability became a big problem. The difference this time around, guys, is the freight. We've got trouble in the trucking industry. What Matt Schoder was talking about with the big soda company, basically going from shipping by ship to shipping by aircraft. One of our salesmen who works in another industry was saying they're facing the same problem. They have time frames when they have to deliver to customers. The shipping industry, the boat shipping industry, saying there's no way we can meet that deadline. So these guys are actually they're getting bids from Amazon, FedEx, UPS to ship this material by air. And see, right away, like Matt says, you're just driving the price up. And our salesman who works for this industry said that, yeah, their management is quite concerned about it, because again, they're going to have to eat some of that, because the customers have already said that you've given us a bid. Now, like Matt says, you have that one process that they can override that contract, and so some of that will go on, but it's going to be a real battle, because the customers aren't going to be too happy about that. So again, this is something that has just turned all the business community upside down. It's just not agriculture. We're seeing it in other arenas. The thing that's added the problem here in agriculture has been the run of commodities. And see, that's worked to a certain degree on commodities too, as far as shipping, getting it to other points where they want non-GMO beans and that type of thing. Basically, the Chinese have really, restricted that container market, and that's been a real problem also, and that's affected us to a certain degree. So again, this is a whole new rodeo, gentlemen, whole new rodeo.
Good, thanks, Jim. So there was one guy that rose his hand. Should be unmuted now. His number is 320-766-0415. If you could speak up, we'll see if we
Okay.
can hear you.
Yes, my name is Scott McIver. I do have one question for the guys that do order fertilizer right now. When is the delivery? I'm David McIver's son. It's just up here, if we have to take delivery now, we run into some major problems with crystals in the tank. It's just, will that be able to be delivered in the spring, or do we have to take it this year?
Well, certainly it is going to be similar to all other years where we've done the November cash in advance. Sure, if you can take it sooner, that'll help. But yeah, I understood. Yeah, the crystallization up there is a problem, and so we can certainly push that delivery back as we always have. That won't be an issue. But in other areas, yeah, if customers can take delivery sooner, that'll definitely help us out for trucking costs for sure. And just so really, there's no big difference there.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank
no,
you.
yeah, the deal, Scott, is I think we'll approach Minnesota and Canada kind of the same way. We've dealt with that crystallization problem with the super cold weather, and so we kind of drag our feet a little bit in those areas, whereas the other areas, that's not been an issue. In other words, if I make my order October 1, they're going to want to put it in my tank October 2nd, and that's not a problem for me. So again, the other areas, we will try to get the product out. Number one, just to help us with the trucking, but number two, so that gives us more room to make more product. As we can get more product made with these cheaper freight rates, we'll be able to control that price for a longer period of time. But again, like you said, with you guys in the cold areas with that 30 below wind chill stuff, again, we'll try to treat that very similar to what we've done in the past.
Thank you.
All right, then, if there are no other questions, we will move on to the final portion of our call, which is with our district manager, Bruce Stevens. So Bruce, I see that you're there. You're good to go. Unmuted. And if you want to give yourself a little introduction, and then we can get into the picture of that customer's field of yours.
Yeah, you hear me all right, Zach?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine, Bruce.
Okay. First, I want to thank you for giving me a promotion, but I am not a district manager in Indiana, so you might want to let that guy know that his job is safe. I am a farmer dealer here in Northwest Ohio, in Putnam County, to be more specific. I guess first I'll talk about the picture. And I thought, well, how am I going to talk for 10 or 15 minutes about a green spot in the field? But we've seen this on more than one occasion up in this area. But I got a call from our customer last summer, Chris Roof, and he says, Bruce, you need to come look at this green spot in my field where the lime was piled. And I'm sure there's many guys out there who have been dealers and customers have seen this before. So we took a picture, and I guess the main point I want to bring out of this is guys are so stuck on over liming injury. I mean, the guys that haven't bought into the growers program, but I can tell you on 3 different occasions I've seen where this has happened. Probably almost 30 years ago when my uncle got on the program, he had a field that was bordered up along the woods, and where he had piled the lime, the raccoons just devastated the corn. And, you know, we talk about the quality of a crop, and the raccoons were able to find that out, and they just nibbled on every ear that was in that pile, around that pile from the previous year or the previous 2 years, maybe possibly. But I said, that's been about 30 years ago. And I was going to go out and see if that problem is still there, because it isn't corn this year, but I never got around to it. But I've also seen that on my own farm, where the lime was piled, you know, and just a greener spot. And basically, you know, that can be attributed to, we don't know how many tons of lime could be there. You know, it could be 100, 150 tons where that lime was piled, wasn't cleaned up good. And I'll give you a little background on this spot for Chris. That particular field had a total of 12 tons applied to it. I think he's applying about 4 tons at a time, and probably in the last 5, 6 years since he started on the program. And that is a very heavy clay piece of dirt that he has. He's up and around the Ottawa area, but you get north of him and west up around, you get a lot of that Paulding clay, and it's very heavy dirt. So he's learned to stay off his ground when it's too wet, but he's also learned that you can't over lime. And I said, this is a total of 12 tons he's applied to this field. He's been putting over 4 tons at a time. So it's probably about his 3rd application. I didn't verify that with Chris, but he did give me the total being 12 tons. And that was a Huron lime. And for those of you who are not familiar with Huron lime, it's about a 35-to-1 calcium to magnesium ratio, and it's very fine. better than 90% of it will go through a 100 mesh screen. So it does act pretty quick. So that field was actually no-tilled. He planted in the rye that fall, went in early in the spring and burnt the lime or the rye off, and then just no-tilled into that. So that, but my point is too, is this is a good selling tool, you know, getting pictures like this to talk to guys about overliming. That's kind of, people get stuck in their ways, you know, including myself, you know, the way we do things. But one thing I've done for my customers or people I'm trying to sell is on Dr. Tejan's book, More Food from Soil Science, I did an outline for all that book. And I took the different pages in there and just made key points. And Dr. Tejan does talk about overliming injury on page 103, but you have to understand where it's coming from. You know, he's talking about burnt lime and hydrated lime, stuff that comes, you know, available almost immediately. And from his research, you know, what you're doing is you're just flooding that plant with calcium. And what's happening is it prevents the other nutrients in the soil from being taken up. So until you get that soil back or that calcium back into the carbonated form, you could have some trouble. So guys have heard this in the past, and they get stuck in their minds that this is what's happened, that you can overlime. Well, if you're using the wrong kind of lime, we know it can't happen, but it's as long as you have a good source of lime, you know, and the limes we talked about, you're going to be okay. But this is where, you know, why these pictures are put on there is, you know, to use them as a selling tool. It, you know, my own farm, in the last 30 years, there's fields that had 40 tons of lime on them, you know, with probably some of that's been 50% moisture lime. So, but, you know, they've had 20 plus tons of lime, and we have yet to see the first overliming injury. So a good point to bring out and use it as a selling tool. And I can't think of anything else, but another thing we do talk about is, you know, cutting macronitrogen. Once you open up that soil with, you know, you flocculate your soil with calcium, you're going to bring that biological life, your bacteria, your fungi in the soil back to life, because it thrives on oxygen. And once you do that, you're going to get that increase in nitrogen. So that's kind of what we're seeing here is a spike in nitrogen where it's brought that soil back to life. Anybody got anything else to say? That's all I have to say on that.
I'd like to talk a little bit on the overliming injury and the hydrated lime stuff you brought up, Bruce, just for
Okay.
anybody here that's not familiar with it, if there are any. But overliming injury is what the conventional people will claim is when you raise your pH up too high that a lot of micronutrients become unavailable in the soil. And then the issue with hydrated lime is, like Bruce said, it becomes very available very quickly. The story that Doc Tejan gives in his book, I should say one story, is that his wife had applied a bunch of the hydrated lime to their garden. He didn't know about it. When he got home that night, he found out and just took the hose to it to try to convert it into calcium carbonate as much as he could. It was too late. It destroyed the garden that year. But that's the story that he tells. And that's a case. It's a little different than overliming injury in that it's, I mean, hydrated lime does have a much higher pH than most lime sources that we would recommend. But like Bruce said, it's a matter of preventing those nutrients from getting into the plant because it's so saturated with calcium, as well as jacking the pH up to the point that it's actually dangerous.
And Zach, you want to point out too, as a dealer or salesman, as you're going out there, you know, you have to emphasize the correct lime. You know, there's nobody in this area that I know of that limes with hydrated lime or wood ashes or those sort of things, but know your lime source. You know your calcium to phosphorus or your calcium to magnesium ratio, know how fine it is. As a salesman, you know, that needs to be part of your responsibility and your selling point, that you know what you're talking about, and, you know, do your homework on it. we've used Huron lime up here for years, but that source is going to be running out, and there's a few guys up in our area getting water treatment lime out of Perrysburg right now. Most water treatment limes are pretty good. I think that's about a 28-29 to 3 ratio. So it's decent. And I'm not sure the fineness of it, but most water treatment limes are pretty good. But just know your source. For the most part, you're not going to have any problems. But as a salesman, I mean, it needs to be your responsibility when you're promoting lime.
Yep. Yeah, that's right, Bruce. And you guys, if you can use hydrated lime or calcium oxide if you desire and it's available, but it's usually wise to let it sit outside for a while because as it gets rained on, it'll convert into calcium carbonate, which is much safer
correct.
product to use.
Yes.
And still an excellent source of calcium. So
or if you apply like early on a wheat stubble year before and lay it on top and then work it in the spring, that's another thing. Like you said, Zach, once it goes to that carbonate form, it's safe to use. And not a bad product. You just got to be aware that how it does react in the soil. If you put a plant in there or a seed in there right away, that is going to become available right away if it hasn't gone to that carbonate form.
Yeah, exactly. Bruce's advice was great. That just do your homework, find out what you're working with, and then you won't get burnt. Literally.
Good pun, I guess, Zach.
That wasn't even entirely intentional.
Right.
All right. Well, we're about 5 minutes too, so I think I'll wrap things up. Are there any questions for Bruce?
You must be totally confused, Zach, because they're not saying a thing.
Definitely the case.
They're afraid.
They're afraid. All right. Well then, we'll wrap things up. So the next call will be in October. I believe it's on the 14th. Yep, October 14th at 9 p.m. Eastern time, same time as tonight. Thank you everybody for listening in. Thank you, Bruce, Jim, Matt, and Rick for all coming on. And I hope you guys had an informative and helpful call. Everybody have a good night.